YouTube, it's Brian Phillips back again on the Airbus A380, doing some work here on the spoilers today. This will be part 3, and as you can see, they've been painted and cleaned up, the paint booth set up. The back side has got this kind of bluish hue, and then the top side looks really good. It's a good match. This paint is just a primer actually, and it matches really nice, so I like that color. It's not an exact perfect match, but it's very close. It's close enough for what we're doing. I have determined that I'm not satisfied with this color scheme though if I were to flip it upside down, but I ran into a bit of a problem in my planning, and the problem is that really this is the way it needs to be, potentially, because if I do it this way, which this one would be over here, when I tape them down, I'm going to be taping to a painted surface, and as you can probably all imagine already, taping a painted surface is going to lead to a less than secure bond. And that's not to say that it won't work at all. It's more to say that there's potential for conflict. And I'd like to avoid that potential for conflict. So if I tape it from the inside, just put it upside down like this, and then tape it in position, and then fold it over, I think there's going to be far too much resistance. Because then when you fold it over, you've got the thickness of the tape. So that's my newest stupid problem to deal with. And then of course there's always the possibility that I just go ahead and tape it in spite of my concerns. Maybe stick some tape down here, hold it in position, and just put a nice thick piece of like a packing tape on there. If that fails, then I'll probably have to go with a white vinyl and then just cut out my openings, or put these down like this upside down and then do a white vinyl. But then that white vinyl needs to transition so quickly back to silver, it just kind of gets complicated. So that being said, I think today what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and tape it down. We're just going to throw caution in the wind. If I screw something up, it's going to be the silver thing, and I don't want to have to reprint it, but I can't actually reprint it. So that's going to be my goal for next. Just wanted to let you guys know on my thinking there. I've got this thin but high quality tape here. It's very clear. I like it, but I think it's maybe a little bit too thin. And then I've got this thicker but quite a bit heavier. I also have this white. This is duct tape though, so it's got fiber reinforcement in it. The fiber reinforcement would be good for something in terms of strength, lengthwise wing support. If there weren't nacelles, that would be perfect for this, because I do want to increase the support, but I got another plan for that too, and we'll be looking at that shortly. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get this tape off the reel, and we're going to tape these things down. So basically when I do this, I want to make sure that I peel it off and I get quite a bit of this tape off. And I usually do it really quick like that, and then you don't got all these like separation marks like this, where the adhesive gets kind of weird on you. So if you can do that, it's always best. It doesn't always work so good. You may not have as much room as I do here or whatever. There's always a good excuse, but I'm just going to actually stick it to this spot here, and that'll be plenty long to do what we need to do. I'll just actually turn the tape around. You don't want to let that sit forever because the dust and stuff will get on it. And then we're going to go ahead and take some of this just regular masking tape. This masking tape, I thought it was like 100 years old, and evidently it's like 97 years old, so it's still capable of doing its job. So I'm just going to stick this down here in a couple of different spots. Doesn't really matter where it is. It's just going to hold the piece in place. And as you can probably already imagine, we're going to be putting this piece in place, and then we're going to be taping it. So we're going to go right back to our marks, which is why we went through the trouble of making those holes. Okay. Now, you might find that it's a little easier to just cover the holes by simply covering it with the spoiler, and that's a perfectly reasonable compromise, I think. But in my case, I'm probably just going to go right to the bump mark, because that's the way I marked it initially, and I want to try to keep them as symmetrical as possible. So we're going to pull off a little bit of this, and we'll grab two little pieces for this side over here. So I've had a lot of you guys asking, well, not so much asking, but excited to see the Maiden, and believe me, I'm excited to see the Maiden too. I'd actually really hoped to get you guys a Maiden flight with just the flaps, but that fell apart when I got a new company pickup for work, so I had to do some switching over, and it just always takes longer than everybody else thinks for that stuff to happen. But when you practically live in a vehicle, you kind of need it set up a certain way. So I had to make the regrettably very difficult call to give that my priority on time, even though the weather was glorious that day. I mean, that already looks glorious there, and it's just roughed in right now. I love it. So cool. All those little flaps. It's going to be really neat. When it's all tight to the body of the plane, it's going to be even more neat. Okay, so now that we have this positioned where we think we want it, obviously we need to get this taped. We need to get this taped, but we need them to be taped separately, and I want to make the tape look really neat because it's going to be a permanent fixture on here, and you will see it when you're looking close. But this will also add some extra strength to the wing, which is always good when you've weakened a wing by cutting, what do you want to call this, a fifth of the wing off of it. So what I'm going to do is, of course, just separate this here. We can lay this tape down. We'll keep this turned upside down so it doesn't stick to everything. Then I'm just going to take off a pretty liberal piece here that's going to be big enough to get us all the way across what we need to do, and then some. Okay, so that should be enough for both of these pieces potentially. Now this piece is also big enough I could cover up the entire surface. So I doubt that you're going to be able to separate this whole piece. I think you guys can imagine where I'm going with that. You're not going to be able to separate the whole piece. And I'm just going to be very reluctantly wasteful with this stuff. Okay? Because I want to get a good tape. I don't really care that much about the piece and how much I waste. Okay, so here goes nothing. Guys, wish me luck. Yeah, I have plenty of overlap. I think I'm just going to go ahead and just throw caution to the wind. Now remember, guys, I'm putting these pins into this tape here. So here in a minute when I grab it and try to ball it up, you can laugh at me. Okay, so you notice I didn't get it perfect, but it's okay because the imperfection we can tolerate there. Okay, so now we have that cut. And every once in a while I'll get somebody who thinks I'm quite meticulous, and I may be somewhat meticulous. I know there's many people that are way more meticulous than me. See, that ripple was scaring me, guys. So I had to give it my full focus and attention. Okay, so what I was saying is, you know, I probably am a little bit more meticulous than some people, but I'm less than others, of course. That, you know, I watch these guys doing this stuff, and I mean, they spend like years building planes, and that's really cool. And that level of commitment is amazing to me on something like this. This is a foam plane. It's a lot different than, you know, a real model airplane that you stick build. But at the same time, it still takes a tremendous amount of commitment to put this many cool features into a scale plane. Okay, so when this is deployed, I just want to see if it's going to have that separation issue that we noticed. And so far, so good. The other thing, too, is right now they all seem to be going up together, but the seams are very difficult to see. If that doesn't improve, then what I can do is I will go ahead and cut between these areas. But for now, it seems to be working halfway decent, so we'll just go ahead and leave it the way it is for the moment. Let's go ahead and grab another piece of this tape. I want to take about this much. That'll give me enough to have my fingers on there, and fingerprints are inevitable with tape. But I can potentially cut that off once I get it positioned the way I want. Okay, so we can cut that little strip that has my fingerprint on it. Then I can come over here. Now there's another trick when you're applying tape. Make sure your blade is relatively clean, okay, on your X-Acto knife. And then you can come in here and support it with the X-Acto knife. Preferably you can actually stick it down like this. Okay. You can get in here and just really manipulate and control that. Now I need a bit of an angle on this, of course. The steeper the angle, the better, because it'll keep away from going on top of the other piece of tape. And then we'll cut the second portion. I just want the tip on there now. Oh, son of a gun. It dropped. Okay, so now this is the tough call time. I can try to peel it off and redo this whole process, or I can just push it down. Probably just going to push it down. That was a bummer, guys. It slipped. That's what we call a cringe-worthy moment. I'm sure you guys are all thinking to yourself, are you kidding me? You just did that? Yep, I did. Okay, well, I think we might have salvaged it, because we still have a pretty good amount of surface area there on our tape. May have to do a second piece on this one. And it's, some of the stuff is probably not going to pick up real great. I apologize in advance for that, because the spoilers projects are always kind of this way, because there's just so much finite detail, and a lot of the stuff is going to be invisible for much of the flight. So but does that not look cool or what? Okay, so this one goes up just totally free, no problems at all on the ground air brakes. And then that differential in color, I think, kind of looks cool, because then you've got some differentiation. Now, this is not wanting to go up as free, and I just about guarantee it's because of this. These seams not being cut. So I'm going to go ahead and follow through each of these joints with a sharp knife. Maybe just the first two, and we'll see if that does it. That seems to be about where it wants to bend the most. And I actually noticed that we don't have a deep enough channel here, so I'm just going to extend that a little bit. And then I'm going to widen it a little bit too. That'll give it a better propensity to want to bend as we deploy it. There's still quite a bit of material at the bottom, so worst case scenario, we'll have to go all the way down to the bottom. Now, one other thing that we're going to run into is, you see what it's done? It's pulling this decal up. That sucks. That's a real bummer. I didn't expect that at all. But it's totally happening. Okay, so I got to think on my feet a little bit here. First of all, I'm going to trim this down almost all the way to the bottom. I need them to operate as one piece, though. But this will help a lot, having that additional independence toward the bottom here, because that's where it's wanting to lift. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that, but right there the decal is wanting to lift. Okay, so now my second solution is going to be much more obvious, and that's going to be put some CA under there and just literally stick the decal back down. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's kind of a ridiculous problem to have. Who would have thought a tape joint wouldn't work because of a stupid issue like that? And so far, it hasn't completely failed either, but I would say it's about as close to failure as it's been since I started the project. This one I had just a really thin relief cut, and I don't like it as much. And you can see why I wanted to cut it first and then paint it, because it does appear to be cracking the paint just a little bit. Which is not really a big surprise, I guess. That tape is holding it together, though, quite nicely. Okay. Yeah, we'll have to I think we'll have to tape that. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to tape down with a rather big piece of masking tape. We're just going to take a little bit of this paper towel or whatever we have lying around. Watch this. So I want to get this stuff out of the way while I'm working. This is not painted on the back. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this and just lay this underneath where the tape is going to go. Okay, so we can hold this out of the way, and then that'll obstruct its ability to pull off our silver paint. Okay, but yeah, we'll hold this down while we do this next procedure, and we'll do the exact same thing on the other side too. We should be able to peel this off without any damage in any way. So we'll just stick that down. It's a little easier to get it where you want it first. Okay, you can see it's just all the silver is going to be preserved that way. I'm not 100% sure this is going to work, guys, but we need to kind of get up under there with a little bit of glue. To be honest, the best glue for this would probably not be CA, but I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to get to flow, and I just happen to have bought some thin CA, and the thin CA is actually quite easy to get. I mean, it's like water when it's working right. You remember the other day when I was working, I was complaining that my CA was like medium CA. Well, that's because it evidently had thickened quite a bit. Okay, so I gotta be careful to tip the whole wing all at once. Okay. So I'm just going to get the nozzle in there. Hopefully it doesn't start running until I'm ready. Okay, there's CA coming out. And we'll just see if this works. If it doesn't work, at least you guys can learn from my screw up. I don't know if this is necessarily actually my screw up. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. Being exposed and made obvious to everybody. And then we'll do a little kicker, but we're not going to spray it on at all. We're going to actually just soak it into this. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and press this down. Just get that kicker so that it can start making that stuff work. And this might fail right here, guys. If it does, then we'll come up with another plan together. And it seems to be sticking down, but I don't think it's going to stick down very effectively. Problem with that thin CA is you got to be careful. It'll find every stinking nook and cranny that you didn't realize was there. Sometimes it'll chase down into a servo, which would be bad since my flap servo is down here. Okay, so you see what I'm doing? I'm just kind of pressing down everything here, like this. It's actually kind of setting up, I think. Just not what I expected to happen there, obviously. So now that that's down, I think what I'm going to do is a little bit more superficial now. But we don't want to damage it any more than we have to. We're just going to put a little bit of CA, thin CA on there. Foam safe, of course. Then we're just going to chase that back and forth. And that's going to kind of crisp up the top so that it's all very strong. Almost like nail polish. I keep using that example as though the majority of my audience would know anything about nail polish. Well, I don't either, so not beyond that crap that my wife gives me. Alright, cool. So we're just going to let that sit for a minute. Maybe we should do a little bit of kicker. Okay, I smell the kicker still in there. Still seems to be a little bit bubbly up there. I may have to get a little bit more aggressive on that spot, and that's fine because I can do that fairly simple. I'll show you how I do it. I've only had a couple of occasions where I had to do this. This is one of them, of course. Go ahead and poke this with the needle. And I'm just going to, as small as I can open. And then I got another exit here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and just try to get this stuff to go in. And it will actually wick into that hole until it comes out the other side. See, it's going in already. Now it's just going to work its way down that channel. When X-Acto knives fall, they tend to chop things off, so be careful if you ever have that happen. Okay, so we'll go a couple more drips on there. See, it's just sucking it in. It just, capillary effect pulls it through. Like I said, I've had to do this a couple of times. Not on decals necessarily, but where I've had to soak CA into strange spots like this. It usually works surprisingly well. See, it just soaks it in. I can't necessarily say exactly where it's going, though, is the problem. I don't know how far it's penetrated. I don't know if we're going to get good purchase. Oh, there it goes. It's coming out the other side. So at this point, I think regrettably we're going to probably have to do a drip or two of kicker. And I only say regrettably because we've got that tape right there next to it that we need to be a permanent bond. And that's going to weaken that tape, guys. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Not even a little. I know it will. So there's absolutely CA in that hole. And it's absolutely not set up yet. So we'll just let this work for a minute. This is one of the many advantages of watching somebody else do something strange like this. You can learn from their screw-ups. I don't want to call this a screw-up necessarily, but maybe the hinges would be better. Maybe the hinges we would have run into an even bigger problem. I'm not sure. You know, hindsight's 20/20. So if we would have done, like a hinge here and a hinge here and a hinge here, then things would have surely worked fine. But it's quite a bit more expensive. And maybe you won't have problems with your decals pulling. Like this side, the decals aren't pulling up at all. So I don't know if that's going to be a problem over there. Over here, definitely I would qualify that as a problem. Okay, so I'm rolling that up in a ball so that it doesn't accidentally go back on the silver. Okay, peel this up. Same scenario, just get rid of it as quick as possible so you don't make a mistake. And then these two things popped off the wing because they were just resting up on top of the wing surface. So we'll just lay that back down for now. I guess at the moment it doesn't seem to be lifting at all, which is really good. So I guess we'll just kind of go with it for now. Okay, so obviously in flight these things you would think will push down. They won't. You'll have to hold them down if you decide to, just do this as a detail, a pretty detail. Just keep that in mind. I know that from experience with this one. Those things like to stick up when you're flying, and they will spoil your lift a lot. That's why they're called spoilers, I suppose. I'm not sure why they pull up like that, but they do. Or at least they did on that one. Maybe they wouldn't on both, but who knows. Alright, cool. So we're going to come in here and get a piece of tape. Although, we do kind of need to get this position, don't we? Yes, we do. And no, I didn't stab myself. That would have been exciting if I did. These little things, there's always a million different little things you need when you do a hobby like this. I just got tons of this little crap sitting around all over the place. That's just one of them. Really like to locate this one first. I think it's more critically important to get this one located right. That one is more of an accessory at the end there. and it's positionally dependent on this one, so that's why I start the way I did. Now these we opened up, so I think we need to try to get some symmetry, and it's a little easier to do it while it's not taped down, so I'm going to work on this real quick. Okay, so there's one. This one also got opened up a little bit. There's two. Third one we opened up a little bit as well. And you'll notice I'm doing this without the tape on there. Haven't really paid expensive taxes on that yet by having it crack, but seems like we are doing okay still. So we've got to cut the other side. Yeah, it's actually cutting pretty good with the paint on there, being that this isn't taped down. That side, of course, had the tape on it already. I didn't open this one up very much. I suppose I got to do that one too again. Having that extra gap, I think, helps to sell the look of the seams. The fact that there's multiple panels, even though for all intents and purposes is one panel. Okay, so we basically want to touch both of those. Alright, so we've got it touching. We've got it touching. And then we'll grab just a little bit more of this tape. So, I don't know about you guys, but these videos are time succubus. There's no doubt about it. But, I'm not really sure. Some of the things that I do on these planes, you could probably get them done a little bit quicker. But I suppose you could probably spend a lot more time too. So just curious about that. You guys end up spending about as much time as I do. Or do you go and do them in 10 minutes? Okay, so we've got a good alignment here. Good alignment here. I think we're good. So now it's just a matter of getting the tape ready to go. Now this tape, the other thing we might need to readdress is just getting another piece on here. But I think for the moment we're doing good here. I just got to be careful my flaps don't change positions real bad. And I can always put these pins back in. You can find the holes fairly easy. Oh. Whoops. Got the winglet with my armpit. That's the first time that's ever happened on an Airbus. Plus, of course. Alright, so we need about 1.5 times that. So 1.5, that gives us plenty of extra. And still enough to do the next part. Although I stuck my finger farther down than I should have. You know what? I'm just gonna redo it. I screwed that piece of tape up really bad. That's kind of dumb, but okay. And the reason that I screwed it up was because I was my finger was touching it too much. As a result, the oil will mark it, and I don't want to see that. Not on my finished product. It's one thing on a template or a test or something like that. So we'll go way out this time. I don't think I gave myself enough length to get rid of this little triangle up here. Okay, so we need to cut this at an angle. So we'll just ballpark it. Too steep. Too shallow. Dang it. so many times you get lucky. Don't realize it on the first one. A little bit too shallow still. Taking like 5 degrees each time. Okay, that's pretty close now. Okay, so it's held down. Whoa, no, that's not good. Don't do that now. Ooh, that's not good. Oh, son of a gun. Okay, I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix this. And it's going to be pretty haphazard, but it's going to stop it from getting worse. Okay? See what I did? I just cut off this little chunk of tape. That is ridiculous. This clear coat that they put on this makes all the decals extremely vulnerable to damage. Guys, it's really frustrating. Of course, I don't really think they were thinking about people putting any modifications on these. I don't think most of the airplane manufacturers think about it because they could care less what we do once they sell it. If they thought about it for 10 seconds, they'd put the flaps in there. We wouldn't have to do this stuff. But I understand they gotta try to hit a certain price point and all that crap. I might disagree with them, but still. They're the ones that made it. I'm not. See, yep, pulled that up a little bit, but the tape is holding it down now. So yeah, it's a little ugly, but if I totally lose the silver, then I'll have to redo it anyway, at which point I can fix that real easy. Okay, so now... Ooh, see? Look, it's trying to do the same thing. Son of a gun. I can't say I'm surprised. Yeah, so this is the second part of part 3 here. Just keep rolling here for a little bit. I'd really like to be able to fix that right now, but it's not going to be a little quick thing where I can just do it in 5 minutes, so probably not gonna happen right off. Okay, so I need this to be something like that. Tape hinges are one of those things where it always seems like the easiest option, and sometimes it's the best option too. I should have probably done, honestly, I could have done a tape hinge on my flaps and it would have saved me a lot of trouble. Okay, so now I'm going to be more careful. Instead of going over here, I'm going to go right here. And what that's going to do for me is it's going to allow me more control of what's going on. For a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that I'm going to be overlapping another piece that's been taped over. Okay? Yes. Yes! Okay. I can breathe again. So now I need to pull off this tape on the bottom. Let that tape stick down real good. Now let's address this elephant in the room. Stupid clear coat crap really ticks me off, but at the same time, it isn't the end of the world because I have a recourse to correct it. So we're just going to put away all this tape. We're going to take a little bit of masking tape, peel that off, grab this stuff, and we're going to do the exact same process. The same process is easy. We already proven that we can get this somewhat fixed. Yeah, it's holding down over here, so I think we're fine. We just have to actually go through the process. Not a big deal. And you know, in the past, there's been times when I say I'll pause it. But in this case, I don't think I'm going to do that. Just because I'm running into different stuff here than I did. You know, like cutting these out, it's pretty much the exact same process. Remember, this is just simply to hold this thing up. That's all. That's 100% of why we're doing that. So if you can hold it up, like if you had a helper or something that was working with you, then you could just have them hold that. It's not a big deal. You don't have to tape it like this. Nothing special about that. So now I want to have this close so I can actually open up the pocket. So we'll do that. We'll leave that close, and then we'll go back to the thin CA. We'll have this available, but not necessarily 100% sure how much we're going to need. Remember, we want to be really sparing with kicker because we're depending on this tape to hold. Once you use the kicker, it's going to defeat the adhesive in that area. And that's about the opposite of what we're trying to do here. And really, I kind of need this to be here so I can pick up the plane and tip it. Okay? Squeezing it to hear that noise to make sure it's flowing through the nozzle. Okay, so we just got that stuff up in the seam. Then we'll go ahead and we'll lay it down, but not totally. I want to kind of keep it going downhill like that. And then I'll access my kicker. I want this ESC to help me hold it. It's my kicker buddy. Now I'm going to push it down. Give it a little kicker. Usually this is about the time I glue myself to whatever it is I'm working on. And then everybody laughs and points. But somehow, some way, I didn't yet. Or I don't know that I've glued myself yet. That's usually about the time I turn around and I like do one of these and I rip the wing off and it falls to the ground and then I cry. Everybody laughs at home and they say, why have I wasted so much time watching this guy build this thing? But it's okay. Everybody lived this time. See what's happening? The overspray is coming off. That's because the kicker also likes to eat the paint. Isn't that cool? And when I say cool, I mean could be quite detrimental since that's a painted surface. So that's some of the things you got to watch out for when you have kicker involved, especially with painted areas. Just be aware of it. Better to know it now and not need to know it than not know it and be screwed. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and get this stuff untaped. Stick it to the paper backing or whatever, just make sure it doesn't get mixed up in a silver area. Okay, so just trying to figure out, I might see how it's peeling up there. You might need to do a little bit to surgically insert some kicker in there. I think the easiest way would be to go right here. Okay. And then we'll just put a little bit up right here and watch it wick in there. I'll let that stuff work for just a minute. Then we're going to come back in with a paper towel and just swipe it. Pull off the excess. Okay. I think the only recourse for that would be to extend the tape out a little bit further, with the understanding that it's going to screw up the silver even more if it does fail, which is possible. Again, another reason why you should watch me do this first, and then you can screw your own plane up later after you've seen if it worked or not on my plane. So I gotta say, it looks cool, but it's been a lot of work for basically passive spoilers here right now. Let's see what the deployment might look like. See if I can use this to push them up. Hold the blade. Now what happens when the wing bends? Not much. That's good. Should technically not bend as much. This will actually kind of strengthen the wing a little bit. Hope you can see it from the front good. Alright, so now that we have that attached, and we're just going to leave this tape right where it is. I think we're okay with that. We have to figure out if we're going to try to actuate these from the ailerons, or if we're going to try to, oh, look at that. We need to trim this back. I knew it felt a little resisted. Just a piece of tape not quite all the way cut to the hinge point. I'll do that right now. Okay. Now that should be a little bit less resistance. Okay, so if we actuate them with the ailerons, or if we actuate them with a servo, there's a very good possibility, not a absolute possibility, but a good possibility. Did I not cut these guys? I thought I cut them. Did I? They're not cut. These ones were cut. Okay. I need to cut these. Sorry. It was a lot narrower. Okay, so if we actuate them with the spoilerons, then we would need to have some sort of a piece of material that would push them up. And I just originally had assumed that that would be done from some sort of a push rod, or like a rod that went like this. Then maybe had a bend and just went out and it bumped into it. So, I mean, honestly, that's what I want to try first. And what we'll do is we'll just, because we don't have a painted surface down here, we'll just tape it on here. And we'll see how it works. And it may work great, it may work horrible. But we're going to find out right now and see what we can come up with. That, there's some leftover pieces that we had used for the flaps, kind of holding things together. This might be alright for our test. Just has to be long enough to reach out in front of the surface. Now we want to catch the very edge of the aileron so that when it bumps it pushes it up. And we may need to reinforce this with a little piece of plastic to just bear the load. Or we can go down here and we can have it do it so that it only hits a little bit. Just depends on how we want it to actuate. I'm thinking probably the former. We want it to be actuated more so. In fact, we might want this to come out and have a little bend so that it gets kicked up earlier than the aileron. Okay, so with the understanding that this is totally a temporary thing, we'll go ahead and put a tail on here so we can pull it off. Okay, so obviously this would move the spoiler up. Now the other thing too is, depending on how much actuation we want on these spoilers, we might end up seeing if we can just put a little wire between these two so that when these actuate as well. The problem is this angle is going to change. Okay, so I'm wondering if we can get away with just a V shape. At this point I think I need to probably cut a new piece of rod to do that with. It doesn't need to be super big, but it does need to be big enough to transfer the limited amount of play that's still left. I think if we just do a V and we bring it right down to the bottom of the hinge, I think we'll be okay. We'll find out real quick here though. Okay, sweet. both sides are good now. Because obviously if we put it up here, it's just going to bind the whole thing. But if we keep it down here, we just got to make a really tight V shape. I want a really tight V. Alright. It's not perfectly even. Dang it. I figured it would turn out that way. I want to measure this in case I have to duplicate it without taking it off, because I did actually cut that. So it looks like you got about an inch and about an inch. Okay, optical illusions playing tricks on my head again. So now, since this is possibly going to be temporary, we'll tape it down on both sides. But keep in mind, when we go to permanently tape this down, it may actually be riding inside of a round thing that allows for some play. It's like, for instance, if we glued this like that, it doesn't have to be permanently fixed. You know, it just has to reach out and actuate it. So actually, now that I sit and think about that, maybe it'd be better out here because you'd have a whole lot more leverage. And that's just a pin that reaches out and just makes contact. If we're down at the base, then you'd actually be attached. Let's try that first, and I think we'll find out real quick that it's going to have a problem. Because we'll just put a little bit of tape out on the ends, make this easy on ourselves, and try to do it in the most reasonable order. So just push this down, and then stupid tape. We'll just kind of do it halfway because we're going to be able to undo it and glue it down or whatever it is we do permanently. See what I'm talking about, guys? They don't allow themselves to move freely. I was afraid that was going to happen. Dang it. Okay, no big deal. There's always another option. Well, there's not always another option, but there's another option in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tape this over here, except I want another bend on it. Okay. So we got this little like zigzag in the middle. Try to keep it at about 90 degrees. Doesn't have to be exactly 90 degrees by any means. And then you see, as long as we have purchase, then it'll work both sides, hypothetically. Okay, so now, woo, look at that, that's so cool. That's ignorant. It's ignorant, Brian. That's cool. Okay, I like it. So now if I did this, nothing happens to the other side. But this has to be held down a little bit too. So let's suppose it's fighting. Oh yeah, it wants to go up. So the longer that is, and the more purchase we have into this side, the more it's going to actually pull it up. The other thing is having a longer rod here. So like if the rod went like this, and then down, and then over, and then back up and over, it'd be a little heavier, but for sure you would transmit that motion. So let's go ahead and test my for sure theory. That could be completely way off. Okay, radio system's turning on. On the Airbus A380. Now remember, we don't have to deploy flaps to do this, but that's one of the times when it's going to actuate them. Whoops, sorry guys, I totally whacked the camera there. Okay. That is extremely underwhelming. I mean, it's so underwhelming, it's barely even happening. I thought maybe we'd have to do this. I guess I didn't know to what extent. This is gonna need leverage to push it up. Let's try bending it. Let's call that, I'd say 45 degrees. Okay. And remember, we're like way out here, so maybe we just kind of fall down in there and see what happens. Sometimes the simplest fixes are the best. Sometimes they're not. Yeah, it's definitely not going to actuate it. I mean, because even if this was spring-loaded, it's just not going to give enough actuation. Not at this configuration. So, where does that leave us? That leaves us with a tough call. Say it's at that angle, it'll actuate, but it's going to be only the very end. That's no good. Certainly doesn't look right. Okay, so I have another idea. This idea is far more complicated, but it'll not require another servo. And the idea is that we would somehow carry over the motion from the actual servo. So it'd almost be like another rod that comes over here. I'm just thinking out loud. The rod would come over here and then come up and push it. So it has nowhere to go. It's like a bent rod that would go up like that. Guys, I think it's the end of this video. I think it's the end. I think I'm going to figure something out, and it's going to be awesome. And you'll be part of it then. Thanks for watching. I don't want to leave you guys dissatisfied here, but it still looks pretty cool. And if that's the way it ends up looking when it's landing, that is going to be so awesome. But for now, we got a lot of work ahead of us. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.